Tonight we have the remarkable story of a man who says when it comes to Los Angeles, the CIA hasn't always played by the rules.
The agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
If you don't mind what's going on here, please now.
It began to become apparent to me that guns were going one way and drugs were going another.
The CIA has issued a blanket response to all of this, denying any involvement.
My name is Mike Ruppert, R-U-P-P-E-R-T. I did bring this information out 18 years ago, and I got shot at and forced out of LAPD because of it. I've been on the record for 18 years.
We got on record everywhere we could so that if I did get killed, we would know. You know, somebody would know that somebody was saying something was wrong with CIA.
Mr. Speaker, members, I rise today really with a very heavy heart, one that is filled with sorrow for the families and the loved ones who were killed and injured this week. Only the most foolish and the most callous would not understand the grief that has really gripped our people and millions across the world. This unspeakable act on the United States has really forced me, however, to rely on my moral compass, my conscience, and my God for direction. September 11th changed the world. Our deepest fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States. This is a very complex and complicated matter. Now, this resolution will pass, although we all know that the president can wage a war even without it. However difficult this vote may be, some of us must urge the use of restraint. Our country is in a state of mourning. Some of us must say, let's step back for a moment. Let's just pause just for a minute and think through the implications of our actions today so that this does not spiral out of control. Now, I have agonized over this vote, but I came to grips with it today, and I came to grips with opposing this resolution during the very painful yet very beautiful memorial service. As a member of the clergy so eloquently said, as we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore.
Thank you, Demetrius, and thank all of you. I am unbelievably gratified to see so many people here tonight. I almost got up here and said, hi, my name is Mike, I'm an alcoholic, but I think I'm at the wrong meeting, I guess. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight that are very difficult, a lot of things tonight that are very challenging, a lot of things that will test and try many of us in the months and the years to come. But we're going to have a certain approach to this, and it's the only kind of approach that I have found in 23 years that works when you're challenging a government that no longer serves the interests of the people. I'd like to start off by asking a question, like a show of hands. How many people in the room tonight believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman and solely responsible for the murder of John F. Kennedy? Show of hands. 2 hands, and they're both joking. How many people in the room tonight believe that the war that is now taking place and getting ready to move all over the world is solely the result of the attacks on the World Trade Center on September the 11th? Okay, all right, great. The approach that we're going to take tonight is very straightforward. I was, for some short period of time, not as much as I wanted to be, an investigator with LAPD. I worked narcotics. I was loaned to detectives. I worked a homicide table. I worked a burglary table and an auto theft table for a while. And there is a procedure that you follow when you are presenting evidence. There is a way that you structure evidence to avoid speculation, and there is a way to fight this government. And before we start into the details on September the 11th, I want to show you two dramatic examples. I have two short clips of video that I would like to show you. If we can run the first one, this will set the tone for what we're going to talk about tonight and what we're not going to talk about tonight. For 38 years, as of November 22nd, just a few days ago, we have had a videotape showing clearly that John F. Kennedy was shot from the front and not the back, where the Warren Commission says that Lee Harvey Oswald was, up and behind to the right in the Texas School Book Depository. You look at this tape, and there is clear, convincing, incontrovertible evidence. Yet what good has it done us? What has it done to change the government? What has it done? What have we, meaning the American people, accomplished with this piece of video that shows his head moving backwards as a result of a bullet impact from the front of his head? It hasn't changed anything. I want you to bear that in mind, because I'm going to use the word "you" a lot tonight. And by you, I mean the American people. I'm talking to you as if I was talking to all 280 million people in this country. And I'm going to say some things that are going to be kind of backing you into a corner, and that is my direct intent. So some of the things we are not going to talk about tonight are speculations about the attacks on September the 11th. We are not going to talk about were there explosives in the building, were the planes piloted by remote control, any of those questions, because those are speculative questions that produce the same kind of results that we just saw on the tape. After 38 years, you can play that all you want, and it doesn't change anything. There are people who have been talking about the Oklahoma City bombing since it happened in 1995. We have videotape of U.S. military personnel machine gunning the Branch Davidians at Waco. We have proof up to galore. We're not here looking tonight for proof. We're not going to go home and have armchair discussions, because what's at stake now is our freedom. What's at stake now is our future. This is no more time to go home, and you'll see that before I'm through tonight. Now, there is another way to take on the government. There is another way to take on the lunacy of the mass media, and that is by using their own statements and their own evidence against them to prove that they are lying. Because if you're in this room tonight, you are probably already the choir. Our safety, our future, our liberty, our country, and maybe the planet depends upon us reaching out to the millions of people out there who are still waving the flag, still believing that this is a war like they're being sold on CNN. Now, I'm going to play another tape now, and I'm going to show you what happens when you confront the government with their own information head on. This is a confrontation I had with the Director of Central Intelligence, John Deutsch, at Locke High School in 1996 over the issue of the CIA bringing drugs into Los Angeles. I want you to watch his hands very carefully after I confront him.
Sir, the man in the leather
That's
jacket.
Congresswoman Juanita Millender McDonald of Compton.
I will be coming back over and I'll see you.
I am a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, and I work South Central Los Angeles, and I will tell you, Director Deutsch, emphatically and
Can
without
you speak
equivocation.
further into the mic, sir? These mics don't seem to be...
I will tell you, Director Deutsch, as a former Los Angeles police narcotics detective, that the agency has dealt drugs throughout this country for a long time.
refer...
All right, now can you please...
I refer direct...
Wait. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute here. Wait a minute. If you don't like what's going on here, please leave now. No, leave. No. Leave now, because there are others who do want to hear what's going on in this room. Will you please take your seat? I will come back to you as we roll back across to the center section.
Director Deutsch, I will refer you to 3 specific agency operations known as Amadeus, Pegasus, and Watchtower. I have Watchtower documents heavily redacted by the agency. I was personally exposed to CIA operations and recruited by CIA personnel who attempted to recruit me in the late 70s to become involved in protecting agency drug operations in this country. I have been trying to get this out for 18 years, and I have the evidence. My question for you is very specific, sir. If, in the course of the IG's investigations and Fred Hitz's work, you come across evidence of severely criminal activity,
Let him speak in
and
his
it's
mic.
classified, will you use that classification to hide the criminal activity, or will you tell the American people the truth?
Watch his hands. Watch his hands.
All right, you want to hear the response first from Congressman Julian Dixon and then from the director. Wait a minute. From York. I'm sorry, sir. I will allow the director to speak first and then Congressman Julian Dixon.
If you have information about CIA illegal activity in drugs, you should immediately bring that information to wherever you want, but let me suggest 3 places. The Los Angeles Police Department.
Gotcha.
Please. I'm sorry. Others want to hear this answer. I am sorry. Others want to hear this answer.
It is your choice, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Inspector General, or office of one of your Congress persons from this.
I did that 18 years ago, sir, and I got shot at for it.
Wait a minute, sir. Wait a minute, sir.
And
Sir, you have not gotten the mic yet. You are not. But wait a minute, then don't speak out of turn.
let me say something else. If this information turns up wrongdoing, we will bring the people to justice and make them accountable.
All right, Congressman Dixon.
Thank you, sir, for coming.
Wait a minute here. I thought you did not want to be here, but now that you are here, please let us hear and listen. Thank you very much.
Sir, I want to thank you for coming. You were at the last meeting. The staff probably has the spelling of your name wrong, but we would like to talk to you. We have been looking for a couple of days for you, and we want to make sure that you contact the committee, because obviously you have some valuable information. If you want to give it to me privately, if you want to hand it to that aide where I can contact you this evening, please do it. Don't let us get away without getting a contact for you.
Thank you, sir.
Pass it up to him now so everyone can see that I got it. That would be fine.
Thank you, sir. And for the record, Mike...
Please keep the noise down so that we can hear and we can get answers.
For the record, my name is Mike Ruppert, R-U-P-P-E-R-T. I did bring this information out 18 years ago, and I got shot at and forced out of LAPD because of it. I've been on the record for 18 years nonstop, and I'll be happy to give you, Congressman, anything that I have. I have to tell you that that was probably the most fun I've ever had in my life. Although tonight may top that. If you can kill the blue on the VCR there. What happened after this was John Deutsch was guaranteed an appointment by Bill Clinton to become the next Secretary of Defense. My confrontation with John Deutsch cost him that appointment. My good friend Dick Gregory, who I just did a radio show with on Thanksgiving Day, called me up and said he said he was talking to some people in Washington, and they just chewed him up one side and down the other because he looked like a fool. Everybody here seen The Wizard of Oz? Everybody here seen The Man Behind the Curtain? We have to get to the man behind the curtain, but it's going to be a little bit scarier than that movie was to do that. So, let's take an approach to September the 11th along the lines of an investigator presenting a case to a grand jury, or along the lines of a detective presenting a case to a district attorney. First of all, who am I? We're going to go through this really quickly. I had the misfortune of being born into a family that was heavily rooted in the intelligence community. My mother was a cryptographer and cryptanalyst for the Army Security Agency and National Security Agency during World War II. She worked for Secretary of State Cordell Hull. She worked on the Japanese codes. By the way, we did know the Japs were going to attack Pearl Harbor, and we did let it happen. This is evidence that I would present. This is my mother's separation from the NSA in December 1949 because she was going to have babies. She didn't have me until 51. But my dad was also recalled into the Air Force during the Korean War. He went to work for Martin Marietta and went to work on projects like the Titan 3C, which put up all the CIA's keyhole spy satellites. Relatives of my father were OSS, that's the forerunner of CIA, and they were career at CIA in Langley. So everybody in the family had a clearance. I used to come home from school and say, "What's for dinner?" And Mom would say, "I can't tell you." That's a joke. I hope. Now what I need is a way to do this so that I don't get them all whacked up here. Continuing with the presentation, there's a couple of points I want to make here in Portland. This is one of my rating reports from LAPD showing an outstanding rating, showing also that I have, especially in the field of narcotics enforcement and investigative procedures, I was loaned to Wilshire Division Narcotics several times and specialized in narcotics. I was even sent to a training school by the U.S. Department of Justice and the DEA, which I attended. You don't get that for writing parking tickets. And the reason why I say this is because the ranking member of LAPD in the room that day when I confronted John Deutsch told Ted Koppel that I had never worked narcotics. And that got me pulled from a live interview with Ted Koppel. The ranking member of LAPD in the room that day was Deputy Chief Mark Croker. Yeah, I'm having fun already. Now I want to talk about CIA dealing drugs briefly because I have to lay a foundation. You have to understand the economic and the political context in which this war is taking place and in which it is set. And there's two things that if you don't understand, you will never understand September the 11th. One is drugs, the other is oil. Or one is oil, the other is drugs, okay? We want to talk about evidence. We want to talk about proof, okay? This is a memorandum that was written February 11th, 1982 to the Honorable William J. Casey. Everybody remember Bill Casey from Iran-Contra? CIA Director, signed by Attorney General William French Smith. This was at the beginning of the Contra War, very early in the Reagan administration. And something had happened before this. There had been a series of negotiations. Now, in the CIA, the highest rung on the food chain is called an officer. If you are a case officer at CIA, you are someone who cannot be disavowed or denied. You are a man of the cloth. You are a man blessed with immunity. The agency will protect you. But underneath that on the food chain, they have career agents contract agents, foreign agents, informants. They have proprietary companies, employees of the there's a whole category of people. Well, in 1982, because the CIA knew there was going to be a massive explosion in cocaine trafficking that they were going to control, U.S. Cocaine consumption went from roughly 80 metric tons in 1979 to 600 metric tons by 1987. Think about that for a minute. That's a lot of coke. All right? They knew that was coming. All right? So one of the things they did legally, because the agency and the government, they always find paper ways to try to cover their trail, and they think nobody will catch them. One of my favorite lines of all time, and for the first 100 of you who got here, you got a free copy of my last issue of From the Wilderness, is from Alan Dulles, who, when the Warren Commission report was released, however many volumes there were, and you read those volumes and you know that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill John Kennedy. And Alan Dulles said, the American people don't read. You don't read. This memorandum says, first of all, they took all the people who were not case officers and they decided to call them non-employees of the Central Intelligence Agency. There's a federal law stating that if a federal employee breaks a federal law, you have to report him. They were caught on the horns of a dilemma. So first they said, well, all these people are not employees, even though they get CIA paychecks. And then they said, in light of these provisions and in view of the fine cooperation the Drug Enforcement Administration has received from CIA, no formal requirement regarding the reporting of narcotics violations has been included in these procedures. That's black and white evidence of a conspiracy. The Attorney General of the United States just told the CIA director he no longer had to report it when anybody other than a case officer was dealing drugs. Let's look at something else about how cynical these people are. Now, I've been studying CIA and the drug trade for about 23 years, and this is one of my favorite documents of all time. Some 28 C-130 Hercules were smuggled by the CIA and the Pentagon through the U.S. Forest Service into private hands, supposedly for the purpose of fighting forest fires. The problem is that some of them turned up in Peru, in Mexico, in Panama, in Angola, in Iran, and Iraq, running covert missions for the CIA. One of these C-130s was caught in Mexico City. Aeropostal de Mexico had it, with $1 billion worth of cocaine on board. The Forest Service, having let these airplanes out, found itself in a kind of embarrassing position. So they had their lawyers work on it, and notice the last sentence. DOD is the Department of Defense. Apparently, DOD thinks that by having the Forest Service as the intermediary, if any future aircraft are used in drug smuggling, the Forest Service and not DOD will suffer the adverse publicity. They don't care about stopping it. They care about who's going to take the blame. It is possible to nail these people, but you have to know how to approach. The main reason why the CIA deals drugs is for one reason and one reason only. It's not to fund covert operations. The main reason is not to weed out the gene pool, although I will tell you, and I have proven that blacks have been deliberately targeted, but the CIA brings in more drugs than all the African Americans could use in this country. The main reason the CIA deals drugs is to support the U.S. economy. Let's take a look for a second. I don't know if you can read this in the back, but I'll call the names out. We're going to see something that's very unusual here. The National Security Act of 1947 created the CIA. It was written by a man named Clark Clifford, who was a longtime aide to Harry Truman. Okay? Clark Clifford's profession was he was a Wall Street banker and lawyer. Clark Clifford is also the man who brought a bank called BCCI into the United States in the 1980s, a drug money laundering bank that was exposed for laundering drug money. The design for the CIA, in other words, the people who told Clifford how to write the act, were two brothers, John Foster and Allen Dulles, the Dulles brothers, Duller and Dulles. John Foster Dulles was Secretary of State to President Dwight Eisenhower. Allen Dulles was the DCI, not from 81 to 87. He was the DCI from, I think, roughly 1953 until about 61 in the Bay of Pigs when John F. Kennedy fired him. You know what their profession was? Wall Street lawyers at the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell, which is today the most powerful law firm on Wall Street. Bill Casey, the man we just saw the memo addressed to. We know he was Ronald Reagan's DCI. What did Bill Casey do for Richard Nixon? He was chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Stanley Sporkin, one of my favorite turkeys, was CIA General Counsel during the 80s. He used to email back and forth with Oliver North. Dear Stanley to Ollie, Stanley to Ollie. It was very funny. Okay? Do you know what he did before he became... No, he was the General Counsel to the SEC. Securities and Exchange Commission, charged with monitoring all securities transactions. David Daugherty, CIA General Counsel after Stanley Sporkin. You know what he does today? The Executive Vice President of the New York Stock Exchange for enforcement. Isn't that great? And then we have a gentleman by the name of A.B. Buzzy Krongard, and we're going to hear a lot about Buzzy Krongard tonight. Buzzy Krongard is currently the CIA Executive Director. The top three positions are DCI, Director of Central Intelligence, DDI, Deputy Director of Intelligence, and Executive Director. Buzzy Krongard was, until 1998, the head of an investment bank called A.B. Brown. A.B. Brown is involved in insider trading connected to September the 11th. He's a Wall Street banker. As a matter of fact, 6 out of 7 of the first deputy directors of intelligence came to CIA from Wall Street. The mission of the CIA is to control money and cash flow for the benefit not of you and me, but for the benefit of the banks and the stock brokerage houses and all of the interests that control U.S. politics. Now, the U.S. economy is in deep trouble. But the level of criminality in this government and in this country has become so overt in the last 2 years that the stink is becoming hard for people to ignore. This is a story from the Associated Press, June 27, 1999. New York Stock Exchange chief, that's a guy by the name of Dick Grasso, hops on an airplane in New York City and flies to Bogota, Colombia, hops in an armor-plated limousine and drives up to the foothills in the mountains that are occupied by the FARC guerrillas, who occupy a third of Colombia. They tax the cocaine. Everybody in Colombia deals drugs. But what did he ask them to do? He asked the FARC guerrillas to invest their drug profits in Wall Street. There's an AP story right there. He didn't say stop dealing drugs, it's bad for our kids. He said, let us manage your drug money. The FARC said, we think we would rather keep our money in Colombia for the benefit of Colombians. Why should we send it to New York? And what happened a year later was Bill Clinton announced Plan Colombia. And don't get me wrong here, Colombia is on the list of countries where this administration is planning to go to war because there's also oil there. All right. Still laying a foundation, but we're getting ready to move into September 11th. Let's look at a little history of the Bush family. I'm having a lot of fun. Okay. This is from a book called The Unauthorized Biography of George Bush, which is an extremely well-researched book. and everything that they put in here is sourced. If we go to George Herbert Walker Bush's father, Prescott Bush, he was the managing director of a firm called Brown Brothers Harriman during the 30s and 40s. Brown Brothers Harriman financed Adolf Hitler before and during World War II. Brown Brothers Harriman got involved with the Hamburg steamship line. They got involved with a number of companies and front organizations that channeled money directly to Adolf Hitler, and they did not stop that relationship when the war began. As a matter of fact, one particular firm, it was a bank affiliated, it was the Union Bank, affiliated with the Thyssen, that's T-H-Y-S-S-E-N, Steel Trust, managed by Prescott Bush, produced 50.8% of Nazi Germany's pig iron, 41.4% of Nazi Germany's universal plate, 36% of Nazi Germany's heavy plate, 38.5% of Nazi Germany's galvanized steel, 45.5% of Nazi Germany's pipes and tubes, 22% of Nazi Germany's wire, and 35% of Nazi Germany's explosives. It was so egregious and offensive that we find that in 1942, under the Trading with the Enemy Act, the U.S. government took over the Union Banking Corporation, in which Prescott Bush was a director, and they seized the assets. That's our current president's grandfather. Now, we know that our current president's father went out of his way to arm Saddam Hussein. How many people remember Iraqgate? I have an excellent story on that. There's monstrous, wonderful sourcing on the fact that George Herbert Walker Bush created the enemy which he fought in 1991. And so it is currently with Osama bin Laden. Now, how important is drug money? The International Monetary Fund published a report in January of this year showing that $1.5 trillion, trillion with a T, a year is laundered through the world banking system. Of that, according to Le Monde and according to the U.S. Department of Justice, it's very safe to say that $500 billion to $600 billion of that is directly the result of the drug trade. Why is drug cash important? How many people here have a credit card? All right, now I want you to be real truthful when you answer this. When you open your credit card bill every month, what do you look at first? I want everybody to look first at the total balance owing on the card. Raise your hand. How many of you look first at the minimum monthly payment required? How many of you pay your credit cards off in full every month? I'm impressed. The point is that the United States economy, and I was at an economic conference in Moscow in March of this year, has derivatives. Derivatives are anything that's not related to anything of value. It's like stock futures, it's calls, it's puts, it's options. It has a derivatives bubble of $300 trillion. 20 trillion of that alone is connected to J.P. Morgan Chase, which is about ready to go under thanks to Enron. And watch that very closely, okay?